everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Taylor Rockwell, and on this week's MLS Update, we are 17 weeks into the season, halfway there with only a lot of soccer still to be played. But how has the season gone so far? What have we gotten wrong and also less frequently right? Which players, coaches, and teams have stood out? What have been the biggest surprises and best storylines? Will Joe ever acknowledge the greatness of St. Eric of Maxim? All that and much, much more on today's episode to talk it all out. I'm joined by the man who wrote this about Diego Luna back in February. Luna could be a fantastic change-of-pace option for Pochettino, but another 8-goal, 8-assist season is unlikely to vault him into the contention ahead of Gio Reyna, Malik Tillman, and Brendan Aronson, among others. If Luna has another level to hit, now is the perfect time to show it. Jeff Ruder, Luna has 8 goals already, one more, and he's hit a new level. Is that how it works?
That's exactly how it works, and oh, that felt good to hear out loud, because I thought that was Joe, and I was like, oh, that's a great take. And then somebody was like, no, it's you.
I think it was in your article about 11 players poised for big things in this season, and they were 11 very smart selections. Nicely done, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's such a fun concept. I think Nixion Gomez tore his knee within 2 weeks, so that's maybe my one, but it's a center back. And I was openly in chats with friends, name a center back you're excited about, and most of my chats kicked me out. So I had to do my own research at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, between that and the discussion prior to recording of which two players have the same birthday, I feel like you and our other co-host are in the weeds for sure. Rounding out the crew is that man himself, the man who always knew Vancouver would be top of the West at this point of the season. Let me just check to confirm where Joe Lowry had them in his preseason rankings. Oh, Joe. Oh, no. Joe, you did not have them near the top in the West, Joe. You had Vancouver in 11th, but the Galaxy, certainly you had much lower in the table. Is that correct?
Well, the Vancouver one, I just accidentally type out an extra 1, right? My keyboard's a little sticky.
Oh, there it is.
Sometimes it's the S key, or for me, it's the 1 key that just stuck, and that didn't get caught in the editing process. I've got to go out there and fire my editor. It's definitely not me. And the Galaxy one, there's no explanation for it. I had them finishing third in the West, and we were talking about this before recording.
Yeah.
Both of these are pretty easy to see where I went wrong, and we'll talk about these things more on today's show, along with plenty of other teams that we haven't talked nearly as much about this year. But with the Galaxy, the mistake I made was very clear. It was underestimating how good Ricky Puig is and how important he was to this team. If I could retroactively go back and change my MVP vote from last year, which was Lionel Messi, if there was anyone to change it to, it would be Ricky Puig, and it probably would be worth changing. Yeah, that's a big fat L on my part, and I will graciously accept it.
If I'm being charitable, I would point out, Joe, your bottom 3 in the East, I think, were Toronto, Montreal, and D.C. You weren't really missing too much.
On a limb.
You're pretty close.
There were some hits. The team above them, though, in my predictions was Nashville, who will come up later on today's show. Totally wrong about Nashville. Totally wrong about the Galaxy, about Vancouver. Philly, I think I had 8th, and they're just soaring on top of the Eastern Conference right now. Atlanta, I think I had 6th, which I guess is not terrible, given where they are right now, but it's not great either. Yeah, there's a lot of misses in there. The comfort I have, Taylor, is knowing that I'm not alone. That's all. I didn't go through and find your dirty laundry, but I should have.
There is no dirty laundry to be found. All of my predictions were stellar and perfect. Please don't fact check that. I don't think anybody has the document, so haha, joke's on them. Joe, is there any truth to the rumors that Vancouver were feeling very, very optimistic about this season, and then they read your thoughts on them from the preseason just prior to the Concacaf Champions Cup final? Is that possible as to what maybe explains how they decided to be very, very bad on the evening?
Backfield was getting a lot of search traffic from Mexico just right before. I don't know what it is. Maybe Sebastian Peralta was doing a little pregame reading because he didn't have to play this game and started whispering around the locker room. Yeah, it was just a brutal game for Vancouver, assuming we're referencing their 5-0 loss.
We can head in that direction. Let's go.
On Sunday night to Cruz Azul. This was the hardest free space shade-in of any MLS team in CONCACAF play in quite some time, but also not wildly unexpected. The manner in which they lost, I think, was a bit unexpected. The scoreline by which they lost, I think, was a bit unexpected. The loss itself, not so, right? This Cruz Azul team has spent tens of millions of dollars rating MLS's best teams over the last few transfer windows. Mateusz Bogusz starts in this game. Yorgos Giacomakis comes off the bench in this game, and he's sort of been a cast-off for this Cruz Azul team. There's one team in this game that was more talented than the other. At the same time, I'm not trying to just toss out excuses for Vancouver. They laid a gigantic egg in this game. Andres Cubas, their lone DP on the field, the only healthy DP that they have, their single pivot deep line number 6, him coughing up the ball twice that gives 2 goals to Cruz Azul in the first 30 minutes of this game, that it's 4-0 at halftime because Vancouver can never claw their way out of that edge. I mean, yeah, this was embarrassing. There's no way around it. This was a horrific performance from Vancouver. It was their worst game of the year by a mile, and it came in the biggest game that they've ever played, not just this year, but the biggest game they've played in the history of the Vancouver Whitecaps. This is embarrassing. The players, I'm sure, feel embarrassed and are really looking forward to getting back in action to pick themselves up and shake the dust off.
The answer to this can just be no, and that is fine. Do either of you get affected when an MLS team gets beaten this badly in a final? Nobody is looking at Inter and Serie A after PSG do to them what they did in the Champions League final and think oh, maybe Serie A isn't that good because of this result. But when there are results like this and such high-profile results at that in such meaningful competitions, I do have moments where I'm like, ooh, that's not a great look for the league. Sure. Even if it is a one-off, even if it is easy to explain, it still does hit me a little bit.
I see why, and I've seen some of those general what does this one thing mean about MLS as a whole sort of takes still this year. I think it's in a very different place than it was 15 years ago, and I don't think that way. I don't tend to think that any one result is damning for the entirety of Major League Soccer. I don't think that one coach's extension shows a lack of ambition across an entire league. You know what I mean? I think that these things at this point, the league is much more sophisticated now in its sporting operation, where these decisions are coming from inside of each club's independent silos rather than being top-down guidance from the league level to say, hey, this is how we get this thing marketable so that we have a future. You have to sign a designated player, right? So I think that it's in a very different place at this point. I think that there are extenuating circumstances. Cruz Azul, I'm sure, was missing some players, but the Whitecaps were missing Sebastian Berhalter and Ryan Gold, who I would posit are probably their 2 best midfielders. And that's a very difficult way to win a game when you don't have those 2 players. I think that if you also look at Vancouver's underlying numbers just in Major League Soccer competition, so again, this doesn't include CCC, but if you look in February, for example, that was the sort of statement of intent where I was very low. I had both the Portland Timbers and the Vancouver Whitecaps outside of the playoff places in my preseason predictions. I'll own up to that one. And that was the one where Vancouver won 4-1 and Phil Neville had to apologize for a season opener. And in that game, they outshot Portland 22-6. Okay, so that's February. But when you look month to month thereafter, the number of shots have been pretty consistent around 14 shots per game in league play for Vancouver, but they're conceding many more shots with every passing month, adding 2 shots to their opponent's tally per month, to the point where in May, over 5 games, they were allowing 11.2 shots, which is too many for a very, very good team to do because of the quality of chances were about 11% of cashing it in, 0.106 XG per shot. Their high turnovers have also plummeted a lot. And I think that was the other thing where they were getting very opportunistic, kind of like what we saw with St. Louis in 2023 and with Philadelphia at the start of 25 as well under Carnell, where if you are actually winning the ball high upfield, you just have less ground to cover. And the defense isn't as settled and you have fewer bodies to navigate past, so you can kind of bum rush them and you can try to get a goal, right? And that's fun and it works really well. But when teams stop making those mistakes in the defensive third and they say, okay, we're going to give Vancouver possession, but we're going to try to push that possession a little bit further back so that we have a better chance of containing them, and we're going to cut down on their ability to shoot at will, it just gets a little bit easier. So I think that Vancouver isn't quite the juggernaut that we saw in March and April at this point on current form, and so you bring that in, you lose your 2 top midfielders. I don't really think that you can, kind of copy-paste this across a 30-team league at this point.
No, I completely agree, Jeff, and that analysis there is great. First, on the question you asked, Taylor, friend of the show, Felipe Cardenas, coworker of our friend Jeff.
Hey, Felipe.
I think had a social media post about how the Whitecaps embarrassed themselves, true, and the entire league, referring to Major League Soccer, all in one fell swoop. I don't really think that's true. I mean, I do think the negative results probably get more play for MLS teams than the positive results when you look at the macro conversations. I think that's a bit much. But as far as the actual Vancouver performance in this game is concerned, Jeff, I love that discussion of where Vancouver are keeping the ball, right? You talked about them pushing high up the field at times throughout this season. That has been a huge tenet of Jesper Sorensen's philosophy. So they're 4th in MLS in possession this season. But what makes them different from a team like Columbus or San Diego is that they don't play a lot of really short passes in their own third. They're not a super build-up oriented team. Where they've had a lot of their possession is in the middle third and in the final third, where then they've set up shop there and they have a really strong rest defensive structure because Seb Berhalter's a workhorse, Andres Cubas is a workhorse, two of the better and more athletic defensive-minded midfielders in Major League Soccer, and you get really good buy-in from every member of that front three. Like, they have so much juice in rest defense and in their counter-pressing structure and even in their defensive structure as a whole. But in the game against Cruz Azul, when Cruz Azul come out there and are pressing in their 3-5-2 shape, and it's a bit more fluid at times, going man-to-man at times in Vancouver's midfield, Vancouver couldn't get the ball high upfield. And so they couldn't lean into what has made them so dangerous this year. And maybe away from home in the final, they were never going to get the high up the field and stay there in the first place. But Cruz Azul wasn't taking any chances. I think they wisely pressed Vancouver in this game, and Vancouver just didn't have an answer. The execution wasn't there for them to execute the actual game plan that they must have had in this game. And, I mean, by the time they blink, they're down 4-0 and the game's over. So a brutal turn of events for Vancouver. I'm fascinated to see what's next for them because Jeff is right. That month-over-month trend is fascinating. I haven't seen that specific defensive data, but you can kind of see it in a couple of their performances where there's a couple of draws. They draw against Austin on the road after they clobbered them 5-1 earlier this season at home, and they just didn't create a lot of chances in that game. It seems to me like the minutes are starting to add up for a team that is deeper than we thought, but is missing some key players and has played more games than any other team in MLS so far this season. It feels like that's starting to be a thing. It also seems like teams know what to expect from Vancouver now, obviously, in a way that they didn't earlier on this season. Again, that Austin game is a good example of that. And Jesper Sorensen had this quote that I think stood out to me following this game, and it's from Charlie Boehm's recap for MLSsoccer.com. He said, quote, "We were mid-season and not at the end of the season, so we have a huge task ahead of us because we have to pick ourselves up after a huge disappointment." That's exactly where my mind went after this game. Vancouver still have a ton to play for this year. I think I talked about it on the Patreon yesterday. This was embarrassing. It was humiliating. This was a terrible game for Vancouver. It will overshadow some of what they've done this year. It should not overshadow everything that they've done because they are still on top of the Shield race in terms of points per game. They still have everything to play for in MLS and in the Canadian Championship. They could win. It's not impossible for them to win 2, if not 3 trophies this year. Unlikely, yes. Impossible, no. They have a ton left to play for. And yet things are about to get hard for them because they're about to miss a ton of players in the month of June for international call-ups, Canada and the U.S. men's national team. That's a real talking point. And Vancouver face more of that adversity because they're a Canadian team with a lot of Canadian players than most teams in MLS. They've got Seattle this weekend when most teams are off because they've got games to make up. They've got a ton of games coming up on their calendar, and they've got a lot of guys missing time. It's going to be difficult for this team to continue and really just kind of forget everything that happened on Sunday and pick up where they left off. The slip was already happening, and I am fascinated, legitimately fascinated to see how they respond and pick themselves up and actually try to continue on where they were in MLS play.
So we shall see what happens with Vancouver. We don't need to spend too much more time on that 5-0 loss. We should spend a little bit of time on LAFC's 2-1 play-in win, championship win. I forget how this one is being billed. But either way, they won. Club America lost. LAFC to the Club World Cup. Jeff, are you even more excited about that Club World Cup than you already were?
I'm
That is the correct
comparatively. Answer. But I will say it was very interesting to me see how excited LAFC was.
Yeah.
It was really interesting for me to see Steve Cherundolo after a game, who likes to be the biggest game is the next game. That's his whole MO, right? It's not today, it's tomorrow. Stop asking silly questions. We've heard this from other greats in U.S. coaching. But it's interesting to hear him say this is the culmination of a project in 2022, that we have reached the Club World Cup, a competition that they had no viable path to enter until like 2 months ago. So like I like to move my targets of when to culminate a project as well to the soonest possible opportunity. But it was just very interesting to hear like this was apparently a big area of emphasis as soon as that back door opened into the tournament when Club Leon was found to be of the same ownership group as Pachuca. Who knew? You could have learned that from day one, FIFA, but that's fine. So very interesting to see that. The players looked fired up. Olivier Giroud looked like he was a good soccer player, which is not something we've been able to say terribly often over the last 12 months or 10 months since he joined LAFC. I don't know. I mean, like, I'm happy for them if they're happy. Like, genuinely, I think that the way that the Club World Cup is the best is if the teams actually want to be there, right? And if you have more teams that are like, yeah, whatever, like, they don't have to be like, this is the pinnacle of our sport, but if they can just be like, this is a good tournament, like, they're giving us a good game and the atmospheres are nice or whatever, that is going to do wonders to make that tournament more engaging to neutrals in particular. But yeah, I guess this was a huge target for them. And I mean, in general, like to come from behind and beat Club America is something that, that's genuinely a big feat, even if you are at home.
Yeah, totally agree. I was fascinated by LAFC's response to this as well. Like even watching this game from my couch, the atmosphere in the stadium ruled. It was pretty balanced between Club America and LAFC supporters, and it just felt like it mattered. And I had a hard time sitting there thinking exactly why that is. I mean, obviously these players want to win the games that they're playing in. There is, I'm sure, some leftover frustration from that 2023 Concacaf Champions League final loss against Lyon.
Yeah, good point.
Some of these guys were on the field in that game. Several of them were on the roster. Like Steve Cherundolo was coaching. I think it meant something to them to get the big game monkey off of their back. When you think about that Concacaf final against Lyon being their first disappointment after they go and win the Shield in 2022, they win MLS Cup in epic fashion in 2022. Then they lose that final in 2023, and along the way since then, over the last 2 seasons, they lost the Leagues Cup final to Columbus, got absolutely housed by them. They lost MLS Cup, they've lost Campeones Cup. Like they have lost every single big game that they've played in since that 2022 MLS Cup final.
Save for the Open Cup. But that was also against Peter Vermees's Sporting Kansas City, and at that point, like, that was a team that was eliminated from the playoffs. So there also is a difference in scale.
But still, totally, it's a good point. It's a great
full
point.
Context, that's all. Yeah.
But I think the players in Cherundolo viewed this as like vindication a little bit for the work that they put in. And I also just think they want to play some of these big teams in the Club World Cup. Like there's not a ton of other answers that I can find here. The only other thing that I think is interesting, and I don't think this is going to be a huge thing, but I do think it's worth mentioning, is we are now in the middle of that Club World Cup special transfer window that we talked about on yesterday's show, June 1 to June 10. It's not MLS teams are in a different bucket than most of the other big, certainly European teams participating in the Club World Cup, where if you're Chelsea in the Club World Cup and you've got the special transfer window open, you might make a move, maybe you don't, because then your transfer window reopens 6 days later. If you're one of the 3 MLS teams in this competition, your transfer window does not open again until late July. You basically have to wait 2 months before you can add players. You now have an advantage if you're Miami, Seattle, or LAFC, and they earned it on Saturday, in the entire rest of the season. Yes, you have fixture congestion, but it's possible that these teams can add a little bit of talent. It doesn't sound like Seattle are going to do that. Into Miami have had talks with Brian Rodriguez, and Brian Rodriguez, former LAFC attacker, has publicly talked about how there have been talks. He also said he's going to talk with Bielsa about what he should do, and Bielsa hates Major League Soccer, so I'm not holding my breath on that one. But Miami, we're looking at Di Maria and adding him in this window. He didn't end up coming. But Miami are looking at players. LAFC don't have a DP spot open, but could they add a starter in this window? I don't know. I haven't heard anything on that. I would lean towards probably not. But it's open for these teams to do if they can figure out a way to get it done. They can add a little bit of talent, and that is an edge that the other 27 MLS teams who don't have access to this special window, unlike the other teams in other federations around the world, these other 27 teams don't have that, and the 3 in the Club World Cup do. So if you're looking for a reason why winning this game was important besides the $10 million check, which they can do shoulder shrug with, it's that they could add another player, and if not LAFC, it sounds like Miami probably will.
Question, though, Joe. Do you know is LAFC allowed to sell players as well?
I mean,
right. Like they
theoretically,
have to be,
they should be, right? I mean, you can sell players
like
any
all times
time.
year.
It's just a matter of when those players can be registered by the other team.
Registered, right?
Yeah.
So there's this like wonderful like 90s, early 2000s bro comedy potential here, where there's a group of guys who desperately wants to be sold by their club and does not want to stay on this team anymore, and their only way to get out 2 months sooner is to win this game. And I'm just going through thinking of the entire narrative of this, where they're just like, we need to beat Club America, come from behind so we can get out of here.
Who would that be, Jeff? Who's leading that group then?
Well, given the era, unfortunately, I think it's like David Spade. David Spade's probably like...
I mean, in terms of this LAFC team, who was desperate to win to get sold.
Oh, it's probably Giroud so that he can go on loan to the LA Galaxy and salvage his career.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, keep it going.
Jeff knows his audience. Yeah, I'm feeling like this is a movie where there's like a kid who struggled in high school all the way through with grades and like has to pass the last final in order to get summer vacation. Yes, that feels like what's happening here, and I'm going to tell you I would watch.
Totally. Rob Schneider is Olivier Giroud.
Oh, boy. Wouldn't be his worst role. Wouldn't be his worst role. Might be his best. So congratulations to LAFC. I do think that there is probably something to getting to compete in the Club World Cup. Even if I am cynical and jaded and sarcastic about it, it is still getting to play some of the best teams in the world, and Esperance de Tunis as well. So I think there is probably an opportunity for them to play some high-profile games, maybe make it out of that group. It could be a tough challenge. We shall see. I think they've got, is it Flamengo?
For Chelsea, it'll be a tough challenge.
Flamengo on the final day between them and LAFC will be an interesting one to watch, because that feels like if things are still open and to play for, who knows how that one goes down. But credit to them for the win. Commiserations to Vancouver for the loss. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and do some superlativization. There we go. That's the word. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. As I said a long, long time ago in the introduction, we are 17 weeks in to the Major League Soccer season. So we feel like now, at the midway point, is a good time to look at some of the potential categories, potential superlatives at the end of the season, and go ahead and award them now. So we're going to look at MVP, Coach of the Year, Underperforming Team. We're going to revisit some of our predictions. It's going to be interesting. And there are 9 different categories. None of the three of us enjoys brevity, so I'm going to put that one. So I'm going to put us on a clock. And I'm going to say you each have 1 minute for your opening thoughts, and then maybe we can do a 2-minute general discussion per category. Jeff has requested that he be allowed to bank his time. I think Joe is also on board. So I'm going to do my best to track that as well as we go. Should be chaotic and potentially entertaining. Let's start with MVP. Jeff, 17 weeks in, 17 matches in. Who is your MVP so far?
Yeah, last year I made a big fuss on The Athletic about how it was a joke that Messi was going to win MVP, and I had Cucho Hernandez leading my ballot. And yet here I am, halfway through the season, saying Lionel Messi is viably the most valuable player in Major League Soccer. And it isn't just because he made the Columbus Crew look like they've never played soccer before over the weekend, right? Like, that does help. But at the same point, I think we've seen just how bad this version of Inter Miami would be if they did not have Lionel Messi. And I think that is a significant part of these sorts of pageants. He only has 2 game-winning goals and assists, which is surprisingly low. He has some World Cup qualifiers coming up in June and September, so he might miss some time. Club World Cup, who knows? But if he plays about as much as he has so far, which is to say about 2/3, 3/4 of his time, he currently leads the league with 17 goals and assists. He's leading in goals added in terms of all-around activity from American Soccer Analysis. He looks like an MVP this year.
Jeff Banks, 6 seconds. Joe, over to you.
Well done. Yeah, Messi's probably the right answer. I voted for Messi for MVP last year, where I think he was so good for the best team in Major League Soccer. I think he was. You don't need to make the case for Messi. I don't even think really last year you needed to make the case for Messi. I can understand people going the opposite direction to Cucho because Messi didn't play all that much. He's played a larger share of those minutes this year. It couldn't be Messi. It also could be a number of other players. This was the one I had the hardest time with, to be totally honest. And Messi probably is the best answer. The one that I have written down after Messi, though, is Anders Dreyer, who I think I've made clear I love with my whole heart. He is 3rd in MLS in goal contributions for a team that has never existed before. If you want to make a compelling case for a player to win MVP, it's a pretty darn good place to start. He comes in as second fiddle to Chucky Lozano. I don't really think that's true anymore when you watch this team play. But what is really true for San Diego is that in Dreyer they have a truly elite on-ball force, a player who can fit so well in Mikey Varas' possession style where he drops into the midfield, collects the ball, progresses so simply, can attack 1v1, can thread through balls, has a delightful no-look assist over the weekend in a 2-0 win over Austin FC. Dreyer is, I think, the closest thing that the Western Conference has to Messi. He's awesome. He could be MVP, or it could be Messi.
Joe, you're negative 14 seconds in the hole. All right, so we have Anders Dreyer versus Lionel Messi.
I was going to hear a ding, ding, ding when I heard my time.
Do you want a warning as well? Do you want me to add
I just want you to shout, "You're done," something like that.
This would be excellent.
Silence.
1 second for your final answer, and you just have to squawk it, and that's it. No, look, I think it's interesting on the MVP front because I thought about Dreyer. I really did. But I think Dreyer actually has a more viable second player who can take pressure off of him and who can win games in his own right. Lozano has actually really woken up since
he's been great
in a big way to the point where he actually does look like how can you say good value, right? We just don't know the salaries yet. But at the same point, he looks like someone who is there and going to contribute and going to be a leading figure for years to come. He looks bought in, basically. And it looks like maybe he needed some time, 1, to adjust to being a regular starter, and 2, maybe to buy into the project, but he's all in. Messi, I don't know, man. Suarez is suddenly a deep lying forward who's playing assists and not scoring as many goals unless it's against a goalkeeper who looks like he's, again, never worn gloves in his life before. It's the Messi show at this point through and through, and I hate to admit it, but they couldn't do this without him. They really couldn't.
And the other name that
30 seconds.
that maybe would come up at some point along the way in this show, it's not on my list. He's not on my list. And it wasn't in my MVP shortlist, but it's Ty Baribo, who leads MLS in goals with 13 at this point in the season, has been hugely impactful for Philadelphia. I also maybe not have left him off of my All-Star 11 over the weekend, which I have conflicting feelings about. But my argument for leaving him off of the All-Star roster, number one, is that I want to see Messi and Bouanga and Dreyer in an All-Star game more than I want to see Ty Baribo. But also, I don't think Ty Baribo's MVP case is all that real, even though he has scored more goals than anybody else. Philly's strikers score goals. Like that is the truism that I think we've seen out of Philly this year. Whether it is Ura or Damiani, who's looked excellent coming in from Uruguay, only I think the 2 goals on the season for both of those players, but they've been splitting time in the other striker spot. Like, you can dump players out of Philly. Daniel Gazdag, another example, their all-time leading scorer, and the team continues to churn. Like that's why I have such a hard time with Baribo and assessing his value, because obviously he's been a crucial part of this Philly team, and I think he is a very, very good striker in this league who would score some goals other places. But when I'm thinking about the most valuable player and the way that you talked about it, Jeff, of if you take Messi out of Miami, like they're not doing so good. I just don't fundamentally know that I believe that about Philly and Ty Baribo. So shout out Ty Baribo, great season, Golden Boot winner of the season ends today, so it's still getting some recognition. But that's one name that I think some Philly fans have been a bit heated towards me for not including in more of these kinds of things. So I figured I would explain some of my reasoning here in an audio medium where they may or may not hear.
Taylor, question for you. You said 30 seconds, right? Have you seen Interstellar before?
Yes, I have.
So you know that planet where they go down, they're like, you'll have 7 minutes on that planet, but it would feel like 10 years when you're up there? All right. I think
That's what you think we're in right now?
Yeah. I think we are, yeah.
Yeah, that one, once you have kids, it hits a little bit harder. I don't know if I can watch
I'm sure it
Interstellar
does.
for that reason.
I'm sure it does. I
Instead of
like your reasoning. He'll win the Golden Boot. A Golden Boot's
Yeah.
a fine prize. Christian Benteke was not going to win MVP last year.
It's a great
It's a
prize.
fine prize.
All right. That was like 5 minutes, gentlemen.
Here we go. I'm ready. I'm going to be tight.
It's MVP. It's the most important award.
Coach
That's right.
of the year. If Jeff says that Messi is the MVP, then I'm just going to go ahead and write in Javier Mascherano for him. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, Messi is coach of the year. No, I'm a simple man. If you are building an entire team from scratch and none of them have played together before, and you immediately install a system that is easy on the eyes and effective to get results, commensurate with the top teams in the league, you're the coach of the year. So
This
it's Mikey
doesn't feel
Veras.
like Troy Lesane, but okay.
That's it. It's Mikey Veras.
He's top of my honorable mentions list,
Whoa.
but my answer is Jesper Sorensen, who I think has had an even bigger impact. I am sensitive to this team has never existed before angle. I think it's a very, very good angle, and I would have no issue with Mikey Varas winning this whole thing. Vancouver have, I think, less talent than San Diego. I think
fair.
in some ways Sorensen's job has been more difficult this year. Last year in 2024, and I can actually do the comparison. We can't do it with San Diego. In 2024, Vancouver 14th in the Shield race at 1.38 points per game. 2025, 2.13 points per game, first in the Shield race. And Sorensen's done it with I think a worse squad, truly, than the one that Vanni Sartini had last year. Their incoming transfers, Emmanuel Sabi, Jaden Nelson. Their outgoing transfers, Stuart Armstrong, who looked excellent once he was on the field for this team, and Fafa Biko, who's a more reliable wide attacker than either of those dudes I just mentioned a moment ago. Best XG differential in MLS, best attacking set-piece team in MLS. They're awesome. And Sunday night obviously hurt. We talked about Vancouver already. But Sorensen is my pick. What he's done to elevate this team, I think, is very clear. I think Varas has done a lot to elevate that team as well. But with Vancouver's squad not changing all that much, and certainly not changing for the better, it feels like a pretty nice control case for a somewhat rare moment where a coach really does impact the team in a major way. And it's just so clear to me that Sorensen has done that this year, and I think he deserves credit for that.
Jeff, how do you feel about that counter argument, or do you want to make more pro Mikey Veras arguments?
I think that they're both fine. And I think that especially if they can, it's first half of the year. So like Sorensen, yes, but I think that he still is going to be a front runner so long as the bottom doesn't fall out from Vancouver, because the other side is that we have seen teams like LAFC in the past and in Seattle for that matter, after winning it, right, who have really struggled after putting so much into that run. And so it'll be interesting to see how much they have left, if they're able to contend at the top of the West. If they fall closer to like the 3, 4, 5, 6 range, that'll complicate his candidacy. I would say other people worth mentioning here, Wilfred Nancy for having Columbus continue to do its thing in spite of last week's result, Eric Ramsey for turning Minnesota into like a really low volume buzzsaw. It's a good year for coaching in this league. I'd say it's a really good year for coaching.
That'll pop up later for me as well, but Bruce Arena and BJ Callahan also on my list.
Yes, both of them, absolutely.
All right, you both banked a little bit of time. I'll give you both credit for that. Let's go to newcomer of the year. Joe, let's start with you. Who's your? Youngster, young player of the year. Who have you got?
I have Alex Freeman as my young player of the year, and
Really?
I've been spewing Alex Freeman propaganda for months now, so this is not new. I also have a pretty significant honorable mentions list, so I'm not going to take long on Freeman because I've done it before. 20 years old, just an elite prospect in that right back spot, and probably more than a prospect. He's been the best right back in Major League Soccer this year. I don't think it's been close. 4 goals from the fullback spot. Just so savvy with his off-ball positioning. Really, really smart soccer player, athletic, skilled. Again, 4 goals for half a season as a fullback. Like, that is ridiculous. He is an impact player in the attack. He's not a liability in defense. He's also starting to get some European interest, which is not how you win Young Player of the Year. I'm just simply pointing that out. I believe Parma are the club that's been reported for him from Serie A. I think it's going to take a little bit more for Orlando to part ways with him because he has been just that good. Other great options here as well. I'm not married to Freeman, but he is my pick.
Jeff, how say you?
Freeman's my pick as well, but I'm going to start getting into the, hey, we've got some others to consider because Joe has been banging the drum louder and better. He's in tempo, every single time he talks about Alex Freeman. It's nuts. He's very good at banging that drum. Diego Luna somehow is still under 22 years old, and that doesn't feel fair. Yeah, I mean, he's looking like a player who can win games in his own right. He looks like a much more decisive sort of number 10. He's been given, frankly, too much responsibility because of how RSL operates as a club, or had operated under their since departed owner. Others worth mentioning, people should start paying attention to Nicolas Romero. I wouldn't say that he's a contender on this, but he's in the top 25 of goals added across the entire league. He is a good ball-playing center back for Minnesota, and Argentine, and not defensively susceptible when he makes his kind of joins into the midfield, which has really impressed me. So a couple of others. Quinn Sullivan's another one. I don't know if that was on Joe's long list. Joe, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, those are all the Romero shot I love. If you can hit on a U22 center back, man, that is such a bonus. I think about Cincinnati with Yerson Mosquera. I think about them again this year with Gilberto Flores, who I think has been a useful player for them. Romero is the best, I think, of the U22 center back bunch this year. I mean, that is just such an asset because Minnesota United needed another high-quality defensive player in that part of the field last year. I think that was a pretty clear need for them. And that Romero was their big ad was a little risky, but man, they've hit on him in a real way. Obed Vargas is a great option for this as well. Would not bat an eye if he were to win this. He is he's become so much more well-rounded in midfield this season for Seattle, where he's a bit better on the ball. He's making these long, aggressive runs forward out of midfield as well, with Christian Roldan holding a bit of ground more on Roldan in a bit, perhaps. So I think Obed's a great shout. Brian Gutierrez, I have in my all-star lineup for this season. He's in his best year by far of his career. A bit too many red cards, excuse me. But he has been a really nice, aggressive attacking presence in this team. He also looks stronger and more press resistant and more aggressive defensively than I remember him looking before. And it's not just about Brian Gutierrez versus past Brian Gutierrez's. It's Brian Gutierrez versus the field. And when you're looking
the Gutierrez he wants to be, to quote Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, that's all that really matters. But even looking at him versus other players in his position in that sort of free 8 role, yeah, I think he's been absolutely elite. And the other one that hasn't been mentioned, Bo LaRue, who is unbelievable. It came up on last week's show with Michele, where I was wanting to make sure that Michele wasn't trying to claim credit for knowing that Bo LaRue was going to break out. Yeah. He's been so good. Get this guy in a January camp / maybe get him in the September camp, kind of good. Under 22 center mid for the Quakes. Second year out of college, was drafted in the 2024 draft. Didn't play for them last year. Bruce Arena sees this guy. Apparently, nobody really in the Quakes organization thought much of Bo LaRue. And Bruce Arena comes in and is like, yep, you're going to start for me. And has been amazing in midfield for them. Covers ground, silky smooth on the ball, way more skilled than he has any right to be given his pathway. I mean, I've got tons of Bo LaRue stock. He could legitimately be in a national team camp between now and the World Cup.
That was the timer going off. Yes. Joe, did you have Luna on your short list as well?
Yes, I did. I had Luna and Sullivan as well, and we also overlapped with Freeman.
Beautiful. Sweet. All right, let's go to newcomer of the year so far. Jeff, who is your main contender?
Anders Dreyer. But can I talk about a different Dane for a minute in the spirit of similar like Freeman? If we both agree. I think people should start paying more attention to Philip Zinkernagel.
Ooh.
Which is not a thing that I thought I would say about 2 months ago.
Why do you say that and then laugh?
Because
Funny name,
it's just like
mostly.
it's a funny name. It's a funny contrarian pick. And it feels like the Chicago Fire always kind of have some guy who's from, like, in this case, Denmark or Germany or Poland, who is, like, not terribly quick, but is very smart at reading space and technically gifted, and so therefore can do some really fun stuff. And he's the latest in the proud lineage of these guys. I thought that Jonathan Bamba would be kind of their transition attack star when they signed him, but Zinkernagel, I think, has really taken that ownership and has done quite well in it. He's a good finisher from unexpected spots, as Pedro Gallese learned the hard way this weekend. Really tough game for Gallese, but he's also a really good tempo setter. He's really accurate. He fits this kind of mold, again, that sort of like technician who isn't quite the most nimble. Like, it's a profile that works really well in Major League Soccer if you give enough like shape around them. You see it with Robin Lod in Minnesota. You see it with Albert Rostock at this stage of his career, I would argue, with the Seattle Sounders, and I think that Zinkernagel has been a really, really good pickup, but still the second best Danish attacker to have been picked up this year is Anders Stryer.
Yeah, that's a great. Zinkernagel's a great shout and is not getting quite enough love. Chicago are this up and down, topsy-turvy team where they've got high highs and low lows that come in quick succession. Think about their opening day game against Columbus, where it's like, holy crap, this team might be a legit contender, and they're just playing Columbus off the field in the first 30 minutes, and then they lose that game 4-2. Think about them outplaying Cincinnati at home one week, and then literally the next week going on the road and losing 7-2 to Nashville. There's been a lot of that, and you mentioned the Gallese oopsie over the weekend. Like that heavily defined their Orlando game, but they also looked awesome on the ball in that game against Orlando. And Zinkernagel's been a big part of all of that stuff this year. We should also add on Chicago. I don't think we've talked about it. We talked about it pre-show. New stadium coming for the Chicago Fire, soccer specific.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's some wrinkles to the privately funded part. I was skimming in our Discord, and there was some discussion about that. But it sounds like Joe Mansueto is leading that charge. I need to read more about it. But it looks like a great location. And I was telling these guys, I've never been to Chicago before. I already had excuses to go. Now I have an even bigger excuse. So congrats to the Fire. This looks awesome.
Yeah, it's really close to the Chicago River. It's also really close to Lake Michigan, which is just great. So you have some good walkability there. It's very accessible through transit, which is something that every team should be looking for when a city has robust of an infrastructure as it is in Chicago. It's very close to Second City, so that's a fun little weekend you can make of it. Lincoln Park is a fun little park to walk around. They did a really good job securing this spot. I think that this is a very worthy place for the home of a genuinely attractive Major League Soccer team.
Yeah, and this also will, I would imagine, ties into a bigger vision for Chicago when it comes to player acquisition as well, right? You think about them being in for Kevin De Bruyne. The stadium opening is scheduled for 2028, which feels ambitious. But,
I don't think he would have made it to 2028 if it makes it any easier
I don't
for
think
Chicago.
so either.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a surprise that Chicago are going for these kinds of players. Like if you look at Joe Mansueto and what he's done since becoming the owner of the Fire, he has done almost everything right. Like the thing that I think he hasn't done right is keeping Georg Heitz around for too long and spending good money after bad. But he's been willing to spend a ton of money. It seems like the Greg Berhalter hire was a really smart one based off of what we've seen so far. And he has wanted to support the team by building the new training center and building a new stadium. Like this is a serious operation. And Chicago want to go out there and sign serious players to fill out their roster, yes, but they also want to make a splash. And don't be surprised if come the opening of this stadium, if they have, I don't know, one of the most famous players on the planet playing for them. Like it won't be Neymar by 2028. It won't be De Bruyne. Or I mean, I don't know. Maybe it will be if his Napoli tenure's over by then. But Chicago are taking swings, and they are, I think, one of the most interesting teams in the league in a good way now, instead of being interesting because we can point at them and chuckle at how bad they are.
Joe, did we get a newcomer from you?
Yeah, Dreyer. And I don't even think it's close whatsoever.
No,
I know I am.
Not.
If there's an Alex Freeman drum, there's an Anders Dreyer drum. But I mean, a lot
more
of the
of a cymbal, a hi-hat.
a lot of the yeah, exactly, it's just a clang. A lot of the big time players who came in for big fees, and this is a reminder that transfer fees do not equal quality. Just haven't done much. Miguel Almirón's out here passing the ball backwards to the New York Red Bulls for them to go and score goals, and Latte Lot's been pretty good, but he's getting no support, so I don't really think he's quite on this list. Austin's guys have busted hard. Denke looks good, but Cincinnati aren't quite there, and I'm not really ready on that one. There aren't a lot of players that I'm like, yeah, it's you. And with Dreyer, that's my exact reaction.
There we go. All right, 4 categories down, 5 to go. We're going to take one more break. We'll come back and keep doing some superlative awarding. Back soon. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show. Our next MLS superlative through the midpoint of the season, most underperforming team. I feel like there's an obvious answer here, but I feel like you can also explain away why they are underperforming. Jeff, where are you on this one?
Are you talking about the Galaxy?
I am indeed.
Yeah, and they are underperforming, but I actually did look at like my preseason projections and who is furthest below it, and that's Atlanta, actually. Because I think that, again, for all the reasons, I think we assumed that the Galaxy wouldn't be top 4 in the West this year. Or top
Yeah,
three,
we all
so,
assumed that.
Yeah.
Me too. I also did that.
I think, look, I'm saying that because I'm pretty sure I had them exactly 5th.
Nice.
But like, the idea then is once you get beyond, like, the top 3 places in a conference, it's at that point, like, you know that you're just kind of shuffling on vibes and being like, yeah, sure, we'll throw that team there. I had Atlanta 3rd in the Eastern Conference, and I thought that they would overtake Columbus. I thought that they would overtake Charlotte. I thought that they would overtake a lot of teams. But right now they look so completely unmoored and so, like, that I am so sick of hearing commentators say, wow, against the run of play, Atlanta United has conceded. It's like, man, at a certain point, it's just because their game model is not conducive to them scoring goals the way that Ronnie Dyla wants them to play. He's like, I don't really understand what they're trying to curate. I don't know what they're building towards. There are a lot of really expensive vases that were purchased by ownership without a stable pedestal upon which to set them. And they're breaking over and over and over again. And at a certain point, it's just a lot of expensive dust.
Great analogy. I like that a lot. Yeah, I think the real struggle for Atlanta, and I kind of bought into some of this too. I had them 6th in the Eastern Conference. The Galaxy are my answer, by the way. We've talked about them plenty. With Atlanta, the real challenge was it's a lot of the same dudes that were around when Thiago Almada and Giacomakis were around leading this team. And Thiago Almada and Giacomakis are better combined than Almiron and Latte Lat. Like that's just the reality. At the very least, they're not worse than Almiron and Latte Lat. Like Giacomakis wasn't healthy a lot, so that's the benefit that the new crop has. But Almada was amazing, and it's certainly better than this version of Miguel Almiron in terms of attacking contributions. Like they still need to overhaul a lot of this roster, and I had thought that some of the top end talent would be enough to paper over some of those cracks. And I still think this team's probably going to end up being a bit better than where they are right now. But the East is a buzzsaw. There's a lot of really good teams in the East. I don't think Atlanta are probably going to make the playoffs at this point. I had them 6th. They're not going to be inside that top 7 automatic playoff spots. It's been a really, really rough year for Atlanta. And on the Galaxy front, very briefly, because they are, in my mind, the most underperforming team. Like, you come into this year, and there's a way in which I can see where I was going, 5 months ago, whenever that was, where Marco Reus has a full offseason, which he didn't get when he comes in from Dortmund to finish the year with the Galaxy. You think he's going to give you something on that number 10 spot. A very different player than Ricky Puig. Sort of fire and ice, where Puig is buzzing around the field all the time, trying to get on the ball 189 times a game. And Marco Reus is like, I'll let the play come to me a little bit. I'll be in the right spot off the ball between the lines. And once the ball gets to me, that's when we break. Different players, but 2 very talented players, no doubt about that. Peck is coming off of an incredible season where I thought it was going to be him or Cucho that moved for big money. It was Cucho, and I thought Peck would be next. That hasn't happened. Then Painsil goes down with an injury in preseason and misses the first 2 months of the year. Like the hits just kind of kept coming. There is, I think, still a world in which the Galaxy stay healthy through the early part of the season. That includes Royce, and they are one of the better teams in the West. Even then, 3rd would have been a reach, given how good Minnesota and San Diego have been, and Vancouver as well. Like those 3 teams being as high as they are wasn't quite on my bingo card. But the thing I missed was that Ricky Puig is everything for this Galaxy team. Like he is so central, like even more than I thought. And that's on me for thinking that a player who gets the ball 100 bajillion times a game was not as central as the touch count says he is. So I'm happily holding the L on that, but it's easy to see where I went wrong. It was underestimating Ricky Puig. And when I went wrong, I went really wrong.
I haven't added mine into this one because you all know infinitely more about Major League Soccer than I do. But I would say I had the Galaxy as well for this one because I did my specific prediction for them. I did the season preview for them. And I too, Joe, thought that, like, yes, Puig is going to be a huge loss, but you've got Marco Reus who's now going to be able to theoretically step in and play more minutes and be a bit fitter. And you'll still have Painsil and Peck. As an example, my specific prediction for them was they will average more than 10 shot-creating actions per 90 minutes, a stat that I was using to deliberately make Joe excited and feel like I could appeal to his
I was excited.
data brain. They are not anywhere close to that at this point. I think combined they're averaging like 6 per 90 minutes or so, which shows you that the entire team is underperforming. The absence of Ricky Puig is sizable and significant. I did also predict that Marco Reus will increase his goal scoring from last year by 400%. I think that's because he had one goal in the prior season.
He's at 3 right now.
There we go. So we're getting close, but all the same, I don't think that's quite the level that we expected from the Galaxy. So I will echo that one, though. I think Atlanta is a great shout. Speaking of preseason predictions, let's go positive first, shall we, Jeff? Let's start with some that we feel the best about. It could be where you had a team finishing, be it top or bottom, or it could even be a specific prediction. What are you feeling best about?
Yeah, it's like table standings again. So much of it's a crapshoot. Like I felt good about having Minnesota third. I had Cincinnati winning the Shield. I don't feel awful about it yet, just because there's no real runaway now that Vancouver's fallen back to earth a bit and San Diego's been counter measured for by a lot of the teams that they play against. I guess I still feel cautiously optimistic about picking the Sounders to an MLS Cup, which is a ridiculous thing to say after they lost for the first time against Minnesota at Lumen Field in 11 tries. Because I think that they're still missing. It just depends on Jordan Morris. It depends on if they can get Jesus Ferreira to build off of scoring his first goal midweek last week. How the Club World Cup affects them. Are they going to sell Obed Vargas this summer? If they don't, that's going to help them a lot. I think that they still, it's one of those teams where it's like they don't spend big in the transfer market, but boy, if you could just tell them this is the year to do it, they could really make a sizable impact if they brought in someone. I think either more mobility in the defensive half, I would say, is probably what I would do, because I think that any team that ends up losing to Minnesota finds out they don't have enough speed going backward, whether it's in midfield or defense. So it's a year where I'm feeling okay at the midway point about all of my picks, but not gung-ho about any of them at this point.
Yeah, the Seattle pick I think is still a good one. I don't think my view on them as a top-tier contender has changed from where they've been this season, although we're going to learn a lot more about them, all of this stuff, in the next month or so as they play in different competitions. I went back through and opted for not just my standings predictions, but for Backfield, I'd done season previews for every team, and that also included some very odd, kind of off-the-wall, way too deep in the weeds predictions.
Excellent.
So I have a suite of 4 that I collected this morning. I would have collected more if more of them had been good. So I'm not trying to give myself too much credit here. But to rattle through these very quickly, I said for Vancouver that Sebastian Berhalter would become an every game starter, either in Vancouver or somewhere else. He has, because he wasn't previously. He's become even more than that, so he's still undersold. But he was the best Vancouver player outside of Ryan Gauld last year in terms of passing value added, based off of ASA's goals added metric. I mean, he's been a data darling for a long time. That Vancouver brought him in the first place from Austin was because they had identified that he was a really promising player. Some front office changes since then, and said Berhalter wasn't getting a lot of looks from Sartini in his best position in midfield, playing a lot of wingback. But yeah, he's been great. I predicted that Cincinnati would have the second longest shot distance. Excuse me, that they would have the longest shot distance in MLS. They're second in that category. Yeah. They were, I think, third the year before. So let's not give too much credit. But when you have Luca Oriano, who has never met a shot he didn't like, and Evander, who is the same, it's a pretty good place to go. San Jose, I said would concede at least 25 fewer goals this year than last, but that they would still end up with one of the weaker defensive records in the league. This might be my favorite one because they allowed 78 goals last year. They're on track to allow 56. So I'm only 3 goals off there. If they allow 53, I'm spot on. Daniel's been healthy for most of the year. That was where a big part of this was coming from. They bring in Bruce Arena, who's going to give them a bit more structure. I think that's also hit. And they also added a couple of starting quality center backs over the offseason. Defenders over the offseason. In Romney, DeJuan Jones came midseason, but he's in that category too. And they're super draft guys. That's a close one. They've still been very leaky defensively, so I hate on that part. But they are almost right on that 25 fewer goals allowed mark. And my last one, Simon Betcher will have his purchase option triggered by St. Louis. Easily the most important thing happening in St. Louis right now. That happened in April. Go me. There's my 4.
Joe, I ran through a couple of these, I think, before we started recording. For my specific predictions, I had Zach Steffen. Zach Steffen's stats will improve, perhaps significantly, but Joe will still be unenthused.
Yeah,
I think he has better numbers, through most goalkeeping stats.
Yeah, he's been good.
Joe left him off his Gold Cup roster. So I'm going to say that is one for me. It's going to skip right past anything I said about the Galaxy. Matt Turner does not yet play for San Diego, so I don't think I get that point yet. The one I think I'm pretty pumped about. There's 2. Sergio Orahel Jr. will play at least 800 minutes. I think he played 0 minutes in the last 2 seasons after making his 11-minute debut in 2022. There you go. He's played over 1,100 so far. I also had Chris Brady's clean sheet percentages going up. I'm not going to claim that one because their season has been more erratic than I expected. But I will definitely take that Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting will score more goals this season than Dante Vanzeir did in his 2 seasons with the team combined. A fairly low bar because I think Vanzeir had 8 in MLS, 11 in all competitions. But Choupo-Moting is what, at 10, 11 already this season? So I'm going to say...
half of them have been penalties. I mean, what a prolific...
See, there we go. There's the hate already.
Scorer.
Joe refuses to apologize to St. Eric of Maxim.
Penalty
Joe,
merchants unite.
What did he do to make you mad?
I got nothing against Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting. I think it's absurd that the Red Bulls used a DP spot on him and continue to be just so lame. And the same goes for NYCFC. So you're not alone, Red Bulls, when it comes to your transfer business. And Choupo-Moting's fine. He's a good, maybe not quite good, but like good-ish MLS player. 6 non-penalty goals for half a season is like not something that's going to get me out of bed.
I will repeat what I said when he scored like 4 goals in his first month. They did not sign him to score goals in spring. We will see if he has any legs about him in the playoffs.
So if they didn't sign him for the spring,
this is not the reason
sure
you
he
get
has
a
legs
DP.
for playoffs.
Right. That's the point.
Then maybe they should have signed somebody else.
Then maybe they should have signed someone else. That's what I'm saying.
I feel like this is all slander against a heroic figure.
It's a personal vendetta.
He I will say, watching him in person, he is... Forsberg obviously gets a lot of the attention. Choupo-Moting can do quite a bit individually and is a very good threat, like in terms of back to goal and hold up play, but I think also does just try different stuff and tries to take people on and tries little flicks and tricks that maybe other players wouldn't. So he was the one that I think most consistently in a very dull 2-0 win for the Red Bulls over DC United. He was the one that I think did have the most moments of excitement and enthusiasm. So maybe a low bar there, but still a bar nonetheless.
Still a bar.
I'm saying points to me for sure. Prediction we're feeling worst about. Jeff, you've maybe already hit upon it with some of your standings.
Kind of, but I chose another one because of that.
Please.
I came.
Go on.
I told you. Yeah. So I wrote for The Athletic that FC Dallas would finish 5th by playing the most entertaining soccer the club has had since the heyday of Mauro Diaz and Fabian Castillo. I am now going to present you. I'm going to remind you there are 30 teams in Major League Soccer this year. 30, okay? Round numbers, we like them. This is FC Dallas's rank in the following categories. Shots per game, 28th. Direct attacks per game, 25th. Field tilt, which is possession only looking at the attacking thirds of the field, so every team's attacking touches, 28th. Assists per game, 27th. Made up stat, who cares? Chances created, 28th. Open play chances, those that aren't from free kicks, 30th. If that doesn't sound like the least entertaining soccer team that you have ever seen, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is not the most entertaining that they have been since Diaz and Castillo under Oscar Pereira. Feel bad about that one.
Yeah.
Those words you wrote, though, Jeff, had a really nice sound to them. Like, they sounded good. Like, it was a nice couple of sentences or sentence in there.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
Real MLS sicko fodder, right? To like cite like these like mid 2010s. Like I really thought I was cooking with that one, and then
it's like a great pull. The Mauro Diaz angle is lovely. It just didn't quite.
Unsung hero, forgotten under the sands of time. Him and Pedro Morales both. Yeah.
Yep.
Joseph.
Yeah, I missed on a lot of stuff. I mean, we all do. It's MLS. Galaxy,
We all
Atlanta, Vancouver. I talked about already. I was wrong about Nashville, which I think I also mentioned, but I'll do a bit more on them here because we haven't talked about them a ton this year. I had them 11th in the Eastern Conference. Just didn't think that they had the talent to be a real threat this year, regardless of who was coaching them. Here they are. They are one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference when you look at them, their place in the standings. When you look at them and their underlying numbers, they look really good under BJ Callahan. And I think part of that, and I did write about some of this to my credit early in the season. I just didn't think it would matter. Part of that is because they're doing the kinds of things that I think their best players wanted to do for years. Every season, Hani Mukhtar comes out and talks about how they want to play more with the ball. Like, Mukhtar said this, I think, last January, even before Gary Smith was fired. He said, quote, I think we've showed that over the last 4 years, to achieve the next level, it's important for us to also dominate games with the ball. We have to do the next steps in our future for the club and to bring more success. That's Mukhtar politely saying we're too one-dimensional. And Gary Smith saw that, chuckled, and then ignored it, right? And BJ Callahan has come in with a real attacking identity for this team, where they are defensively compact in their 4-2-2 structure, but they have clear build-up patterns and clear possession patterns, a la the best teams in this league most of the time. So I think I underestimated Callahan's offseason tinkering. I think I underestimated how much Mukhtar had left in the tank. I think I underestimated sort of the middle of this roster, where never been a big Schaffelberg mule. Kassem is still a bit of a question mark guy. They're getting some production out of Matthew Corcoran, which I didn't really know if they would or not. Andy Nahar has been the second best right back in MLS this year, which I didn't know fully that was going to be the case. So I just underestimated the roster, underestimated basically everything about Nashville this year, and I was dead wrong. To their credit, they have been excellent in 2025 and are, I don't know, I still don't know if I quite buy them as an MLS Cup threat, but based off the numbers and where they sit in the table, they kind of are.
I think that they stand a better chance of winning a first-round series than they did at the peak of their Gary Smith iteration, to your point. Like, yep. I think that this looks more dynamic, more versatile to the matchup. And I think that Smith did really well in one-off games, right? Remember, like, a lot of the bracket, when he was navigating the bracket with Nashville and they were making deep runs into the playoffs, it was single elimination still. So I don't think that sort of tactic would have played nearly as well in a best of three. But I think that Callahan has them bought in and worrying in a really, really nice way at this point. And Sam Surridge looks like he's can score, and he can find goals. And that's good, because it looked a lot of the times like he was struggling to do that in his first year and a half or so in MLS.
Is he second top scorer in the league?
I believe so. It's one of those where it's always fun, like you could break the European brain if you told them all the players who are scoring more goals than Messi in any given year, which is a thing I like to do. But
two that I got wrong. I thought San Diego would be in a much worse position when it came to goalkeeper. I was reading my preview back. I was more optimistic about them than I remembered. But goalkeeper was the one where I thought they kind of lacked a lot of experience. That was where my prediction was that Matt Turner would sign for them. And I kind of predicted, or my thinking was that it would be kind of a rotation. Maybe one goalkeeper starts a few games and it doesn't really solidify, so then somebody else does. But it's been CJ Dos Santos the whole time.
Yep.
And
he got himself a new contract, by the way.
And also that. There you go. So that's probably a positive one for him. Joe, post-shot expected goals minus goals allowed. If that number is positive, that means they're doing well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So he's at plus 2.6. Has started every game, has a decent save percentage. So I feel like CJ Dos Santos has done enough that they're not in some emergency situation where Matt Turner is the name they necessarily need. So I don't think I got that one right. And I definitely did not I should not have bought into the St. Louis enthusiasm that I bought into. They were saying a lot of things in the preseason about their coaching search and about how they wanted to play and about the players that they thought could combine and how they were going to combine, and it hasn't really happened. It hasn't really gone the way I thought it would. So I think my enthusiasm and expectation for St. Louis for the second year in a row was maybe slightly misguided. So I will own that one as well. But enough negative.
Would you like the Golden Boot race at the halfway mark?
Oh, please.
As a nice little, so we know, Ty Baribo is leading the way with 13 goals, then Sam Surridge with 11, and then a massive tie for third between Lionel Messi, Kevin Denke, Hugo Kuipers, Brian White, and Eric Choupo-Moting. And then on 9 goals... So
Choupo-Moting and Lionel Messi are the same ability, is what I'm hearing.
Like for like is what I'm seeing. Yes, and then Chicho Arango, Dejan Joveljic quietly both have 9 goals, and then you have a fair number of players with 8. So a pretty even, like a good dispersal at the top.
I've always said Brian White was the American Messi.
Always.
It's don't fact check that. Yeah.
I always said he was the American Maxim Choupo-Moting. Biggest surprise so far in the season. Joe, what's been your biggest surprise story?
Yeah, the answer is Vancouver, so I'll go somewhere else and broaden it and say that the two teams on top of their respective conferences. That's Vancouver and it's Philly, who are the two teams on top of the Shield race. Philadelphia... Man, Ernst Tanner deserves a ton of credit. I remember, Taylor, we had a pretty long discussion on a List for Questions episode after Jim Curtin had been fired about the direction of this team.
Oh, boy.
And I mean, I suppose I was right about all that. But
you 100% were, and I 100% was not.
I bring that up to say where we landed in that. And the common ground I think we found, even with me not quite giving as much credit to Jim Curtin in all this, even though I still think Jim Curtin's a savvy guy, was that whatever happened with Philly next was going to come back to Ernst Tanner. Right? He won the power struggle. He hired his guy, Bradley Carnell, that he wanted to add to Jim Curtin's staff in the past. He told me earlier this year, Ernst Tanner. Like, he hired a coach that he likes, that can execute his vision, and that will do Ernst Tanner-y, high-pressing-y things with this Union team. And it's worked. To Ernst Tanner's credit, almost every decision that Philly have made this year has worked. They sell Daniel Gazdag, which felt like a heat check. No problem. We're still playing at a top of the Eastern Conference pace. Like it is so impressive to me what Philadelphia have done, how they identify players that literally no one in MLS circles has ever heard of. When you think about Lukic and Jean-Jacques at the base of midfield, where that's been one of the best double pivots in Major League Soccer. I mentioned Damiani earlier. They're giving minutes to the kids as well. Quinn Sullivan's been excellent this year. They've gotten good minutes out of Frankie Westfield and some other younger players as well. It is so impressive to me how many things have changed for Philly, and yet how good they've been. Like their underlying numbers have stayed consistently good even last year when they didn't play a lot of good, successful soccer. Their underlying numbers still looked good. They were getting a little bit unlucky in their own boxes, and Tanner wanted to continue to do the things that he believes can drive this team forward. And to his credit and to Philly's credit, they have driven them further than I thought they would up the Eastern Conference table, where I thought they'd be better. I had them as a playoff team. Definitely did not have them first in the Eastern Conference. So that, to me, is the second biggest surprise after Vancouver. But still, a very, very pleasant one for Philadelphia Union fans.
All right, so Joe has Vancouver, but underlining Philly, I'm going to say. Jeff, for you, what's been the biggest surprise, positive or negative?
I would say that. I chose 2 positive surprises, though, as alternatives just for listener interest. One is the existence and quality of Bo LaRue. Who, again, like, just no idea that he would play as big of a role, right? So, like, awesome, 2 goals, 5 assists. He's a really nimble central midfielder. He's good in tight areas. Looking at his numbers, he's not great as, like, a ball progressor, but I don't think everyone needs to be, like, a ball progressor in their system. Some players need to be the one who's smart to say, now's not the time we recirculate, or we retain the ball, and then we find our avenues. And he seems to be pretty good at that, which is a very valuable sort of presence to have in a midfield. So I think he's got a long career ahead of him. The other one that goes back to one of the first episodes that we did as a trio, the Revs are unbeaten in 9. I repeat, the New York Revolution has quietly gone out and gone unbeaten since losing at Cincinnati 1-0, a result I believe I said is fine. A lot of teams will lose 1-0 at Cincinnati. I repeat again because Taylor doesn't seem to have registered this. The Revs are unbeaten in 9 games. They have won 5, they have drawn 4. It's nuts. And the
It is
wins,
nuts. Do you want to know why I was making the face I was making? And
Go
we
for
can come
it.
back to it.
Yeah.
Bo LaRue's name is Bo Matthew Lovey LaRue, and I feel like it's like Lovier or something. Like, there's definitely a lot of Frenchness. So Bo LaRue is obviously from Louisiana, correct? Nope, San Jose, just Northern California for no particular reason. That is why I was making that face, because I'm like, no, sir, you are from the swamps of Louisiana. Nice try. But no,
I was going to
San
say,
Jose
I loved his work as like a grizzled character actor in the first season of True Detective and
Right?
the third
Exactly,
season.
yeah. Reggie Ledoux and Bo LaRue. He doesn't want to be associated with Reggie Ledoux. I take that
No, he
back.
doesn't.
No,
he does not.
No, he
not
does not.
one bit. Good thing that they don't wear yellow. Or else
His
he could
middle
be the
name is
King.
Yellow King? Oh, no. Nice.
Yikes.
You beat me to it. Nice job, Jeff.
Thank you. Here's how the Revs are doing so well.
Let's do
Because
that.
again, if listeners haven't noticed, the Revs are unbeaten in 9 games.
That is...
And I can't get
A lot
over
of
it.
games.
Because it does not look like something that was in them, frankly, over the first, like, month and a half of the season from February until that game against Cincinnati when they lost 1-0. But since then, they're attacking a bit more directly. They're focusing a lot less on their press. They're not winning nearly as many balls in the attacking third. Their PPDA, passes allowed preferred defensive action, which is to say like a lower number means that you're allowing fewer passes to your opponent, has increased. So in theory, they're getting a little more lackadaisical with that. They're inviting more shots, but they're still they're focusing their press to have shots come in from less dangerous areas. They're allowing less than 0.1 XG per shot. That's good. They're taking more of the ball themselves, so they're kind of like slowing the roll at times, but they're also adding a few more direct attacks, and they're generating some very, very high quality chances with most of their shots. They've become suddenly a very good big chance generating team while not playing in like the traditional big chance generating system that you expect with like a Minnesota United under Eric Ramsey or LAFC under Steve Cherundolo, where you play so much on the counter. So they are looking very, very good. They've got that dog in them. I think that Caleb Porter is pretty safely in the role for the year at this point, it looks like, because, believe it or not, the New England Revolution are unbeaten in 9 games. Crazy.
Wait, who's that now?
The New England Revs. The Revs, yeah.
Still more shocking to me that Bo LaRue isn't from Louisiana, but it's a close
The trademark holders of Dogso. Albeit not under that name. Yeah.
All right, so what is the best storyline of the season so far, Joe? It can be something we've talked about. It can be something we've not talked about. I leave it to you.
Yeah, for me, it's how many teams are playing really interesting ball this year. Where I look around the league, comparing it to last year, there were fewer teams this year just chucking out a 4-2-3-1 without any real principles of play in the attack and very few, interesting ideas in defense. Last year, just teams that I think fit into this bucket. It's not an exclusive list, not an exhaustive list, excuse me. Chicago, New England, who are unbeaten in 9, by the way. Atlanta for long stretches last year. Yeah, I know. Never would have guessed. Orlando, Charlotte, Portland, Austin, Dallas. There are probably others. Yeah, groundbreaking. And Taylor, you won't even.
Joe, thank you for telling me that information.
You'll never guess where Bo LaRue is from, or more importantly, where he's not from. This year, in comparison to last year, Chicago are fun and better, obviously better. New England are fun.
And good.
Orlando are more tactically interesting with their outside backs. And then you have the teams with such clear identities, and a lot of these are just way better this year than they were last year. Philly with their 4-2-2 structure that I didn't think anybody else was going to be using this year until BJ Callahan started using it in Nashville. Very different teams. Or Nashville are more build-up oriented, and Philly are much more direct, but clear focuses and ideas of what they want to do on the ball. Columbus, obviously. Chicago, already mentioned. Vancouver under Sorensen have become so much better and so much more entertaining. San Diego this year are brilliant on the ball, truly brilliant. Minnesota, in their structure, as Jeff defined them earlier, it was like a low possession buzzsaw? I forget what it was. It was good. I liked it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Buzzsaw. I'm just going to latch onto that. San Jose, it's been a lot of fun to watch. And even beyond it just being fun, I think the quality of coaching in MLS is higher than it's ever been. And it's not just like, oh, it's cool to have ideas when you play because that's what we all say you should do, and it's philosophical and it's romantic, and soccer is the world's game, and there needs to be like a real flow to how you play, a state of flow, if you will, if you're San Diego FC. Like, no, none of that stuff really matters. Like, it matters a little bit for the entertainment side, like that teams are going to play some pretty passes is fun and cool. But it really matters to be good. And what we like to watch is good quality soccer. And the way you get to good quality soccer is players being on the same page and not running into each other off the ball and occupying the same spaces and moving off the ball to provide passing options forward and pressing collectively, but not perfectly. So there's still some space to attack into. Like,
of course.
You want to have an identity not because like that's what soccer is about or whatever it is. Like, no, you want to have an identity because it allows your players to row in the same direction. Like, literally to understand how to move off the ball so that you can get open to receive a pass and go and get it and play forward. Like, those are the fundamental building blocks of how to play a good game in this sport. And a lot of coaches are in tough situations, and sometimes we don't see that stuff play out on the field. This year, I think we're seeing more quality coaches who have buy-in from their players, and that's resulting in a lot of disparate tactical identities that is leading to effective soccer. That's leading to higher quality soccer, I think, than we've seen in this league probably ever. And last year was really good, too. I think this year's better than last year. And it's leading to a lot of interesting and fun stuff along the way. So that's my best storyline.
Joe, along those same lines, because I think that's a great shout, I would just add, like, for me personally, looking at this Gold Cup roster for a moment, I know people are unenthusiastic. I know a lot of names are missing for various reasons. But you've got 16 players on a Gold Cup roster for Major League Soccer in a meaningful tournament that Pochettino is clearly wanting to win and wants to show a response and a level of commitment from this program. And he's relying on a lot of Major League Soccer players. Again, 16 players from MLS. And that is the kind of ever-present fixtures like Tim Ream. And then maybe you could add in like Luca De La Torre and Walker Zimmerman as the kind of more veteran presences. But it's not, as it has felt like in years past, the sort of retreads, the squad players, the guys who are going to be there no matter what, the Jordan Morrises, the Jesus Ferrers. Maybe they would be in there if Seattle won at the Club World Cup. And it's not trying to fire shots at them. They are plenty capable players. It's just that so often when I think we see MLS players in U.S. rosters, it's sort of the guys who you know are going to be 75th minute subs or are going to be training additions, or maybe there's a young guy who just you want to get a little bit of familiarity with. And instead, in this Gold Cup roster, you've got Freeman, you've got Sullivan, you've got Berhalter, Luna, McGlynn, Brady. I mean, those are young guys in MLS who are doing things and are exciting players. And I think you have MLS creating exciting young U.S.-eligible players, maybe not more than they ever have, but at a rate that I think there is still reason for optimism and enthusiasm about this national team and about the league itself. So I think that kind of folds into what you're talking about and is a credit to Major League Soccer. So I think that's a positive story as well.
Yeah, totally agree. I think it's been a better year for young players in MLS than I can really remember. It's not like it's not like it's even just this crop of 21, almost 22-year-olds, but it's also Chris Cupps getting minutes in Chicago's backline because of a bunch of injuries. Chris Applewhite, I guess you got to be a center back named Chris to get minutes. I don't know, but these like 16, 17-year-old kids. Kevin Sullivan getting MLS minutes and getting a start in the U.S. Open Cup. And that's not even an exhaustive list of these like young 16, 17-year-olds. Feels like almost across the board, and I'd have to go back and fact check this, but it's been a better year for these players actually breaking through into lineups and having real buy-in from coaches to continue putting them out there and giving them opportunity. So, yeah, love that point, Taylor. I totally agree.
All right, Jeff. Round us out, my friend. Best storyline so far.
It goes hand in hand with what Joe said about clear identities, is that I think now we've seen a different form of MLS's parity sort of play out, where you have teams who aren't just like, let's just keep games close and let's get one star player who can win games and then we will finish higher in the table. Like, we're talking about some really, really good, aesthetically pleasing and effective teams in this episode, right? We've mentioned quite a few of them already, but when you look at the table right now at the midway point, there's a couple of teams with games in hands. Vancouver obviously have 2 games to make up. LAFC does as well. In the East, pretty much only Miami, and they have 1 game, but it still wouldn't be enough to get them to the top of the table. So for our purposes, look at how tight these bands are. And we've always talked about how the West has like some chaff, some teams where it's just like, yeah, they're just still kind of figuring out their early stages of projects, or they're in a different phase, whatever the case might be. But the difference between the first place Vancouver Whitecaps, who again have 2 games still to play, and the 8th place Colorado Rapids, who do have 1 game to make up, is 10 points. So first and 8th is a 10-point gap right now in the West. That feasibly, that means that the Rapids could sit and say, we do have a path to a top 4 finish, because they are only 4 points behind the 4th place Seattle Sounders. If you look at the East, it's even tighter. The gap between the Philadelphia Union and New York City in 9th, 9 points. The gap between them and 7th place Orlando City, 7 points. Like, there are a lot of teams that are very competitive, that are taking points off of each other. Vancouver is the only team that doesn't have at least 3 losses already this season at this stage. And it's just really, I think that you're seeing quality throughout it. I think that it is now becoming clear. I said something about a month ago about how it seemed like there were more bad teams in MLS. And I think that it might be more accurate to say our definition of what a good team has changed. And I think that if you would look at this year's Austin FC, let's say Houston as well, New York City, the New England Revolutions, who, by the way, are unbeaten in 9 games.
This is my new favorite bit.
The Revs are out of the playoffs right now. That's maybe the best way to sum this up, is the Revs, who are unbeaten in 9 games, are not in the playoffs right now. The Chicago Fire are not in the playoffs right now. Atlanta United is deservedly out of the playoffs right now. But there are just a lot of teams that look a lot further along. And I think that more than any point, I would say since 2018, I am fully confident that year to year, the quality of MLS is trending upward.
All I'm saying is talk to me when it's 10 games. 9 games, great. 10 games.
Okay.
It's a nice, solid number.
That's fair. So then we will come back after... Oh, okay. They've got Cincinnati at home. That'll be tough. But that's in a week and a half. We've got time.
Really? Are Cincinnati in a great run of form right now? Didn't they lose
we'll
to
talk
DC
about
United?
They're not unbeaten in 9 games. I'll tell you that.
There you go.
Ain't that the truth? But I do think overall it does mean that the quality of play across the league has been a lot better. I think it is frankly good for the league that Miami is still dropping results with regularity, to just kind of show that old model of prioritize your stars and then fill out a squad with whatever resources you found under the kitchen table. It's not going to work. And I think it's a good thing overall for the evolution of the league. I think it's a very good thing.
I agree on all the positivity. However, FC Cincinnati only 2 points in the last 4 games. So I'm going to say, talk to me when you've won 11 straight New England Revolution. Then I will buy into it fully. I buy into it fully now. Jeff, thank you for making that New England Revolution point so succinctly and consistently. I very much appreciate it.
Consistency is key. We talk about it. It's a floor-raising performance. That's all I'm looking to do here.
I really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed all of your superlatives, my friend. Joe, the same to you. Joe of the Year is the name for today.
Yes.
You've earned that title, my friend. Joe of the Year.
I'm honored, Taylor. I'll work on my acceptance speech, and I'll come back with it next week.
Ooh, uh-oh. I'm hearing from the voters there is some late push for Joe Mansueto after the announcement.
It's Moonlight.
After renderings.
All right, deserved. Fine.
Moonlight won.
Fine,
Sorry. Yeah.
I get it.
Joe
Next
Moonlight. That's the other contender. Listeners, thank you all so much for listening. As always, we went insane after the hour mark, as we so often tend to do. We appreciate you sticking with us. We appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.